Yesterday, Republican Senator Thom Tillis slammed President Donald Trump for pushing a bill that would essentially defund both public broadcasting and foreign aid programs. Now, he was already basically planning to retire. He's not going to be seeking re-election, so he doesn't have to worry about losing re-election for criticizing Donald Trump. Which is why it's super weird that Tillis voted for the bill anyway, allowing it to pass in the Senate 51-48. Now, Tillis supposedly didn't like the legislation because the White House used what's known as a rescissions bill. Now, if you've never heard about that, I don't blame you. I actually hadn't heard about that because a rescissions bill hasn't really been an issue since the 1990s. Now, what is it? Well, it's a push for about $9 billion in spending cuts, and that spending was already approved by Congress earlier this year. So understand what I'm saying. Congress approves funding for these programs, and a rescissions bill essentially cuts that previously appropriated money from those programs. Congress, by the way, is obviously notoriously protective over its constitutional control over federal funding. That's why they're known to hold the power of the purse. And the rescissions bill rarely gets passed, or a rescissions bill rarely gets passed, because it's essentially handing that power over to the White House. So the last time a rescissions bill was passed was all the way back in 1999 under President Bill Clinton. Now, Tillis was upset because the White House failed to provide specific details for what exactly would get cut. There's a lack of specificity. So, the Trump White House, of course, has called for a cut to public broadcasting, called for cuts to foreign aid programs. But how much are we talking about? Where are the cuts going to hurt the most? We don't know the details, and neither does the Senate, but they passed the bill anyway. Tillis states that conservatives, particularly, I find it remarkable just how open we are to not demanding the details before we vote. Well, Tillis, you don't know the details before you voted, and you voted yes. So who are you to talk? But let me continue. He also says, but I'm not going to hold it up because of the relatively small size of it. But I think going forward, it would be virtually impossible to get another rescission package done at any scale if they don't do their homework. Now, from what is being reported at the moment, the bill cuts about $1.1 billion from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And that's the very entity that provides the funding for, partially the funding for NPR and PBS. People think that NPR and PBS are like wholly funded through taxpayer dollars. That's not the case, which is why both organizations are still expected to survive despite the cuts. However, these two organizations then send money to local stations, and some of those local stations, require 50% of their funding to come from public money. And so those local stations might not survive. Now, many public broadcasters, again, receive more than 50% of their budgets from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Senator Bernie Sanders accused Trump of targeting journalism, writing that Trump, like all authoritarians, doesn't like criticism or objective reporting. He just wants to be flattered. That's why he wants to defund NPR and PBS. If democracy is to survive, we need a strong independent media. I will vote to support public broadcasting. Now, look, in previous stories that we've covered, previous videos that we've done, we've called out organizations like NPR where we feel that they didn't do adequate reporting or they didn't do a good job. They're not perfect, okay? Just like any other news organization, they make mistakes or biases seep into their reporting. But to target these organizations, I think is really politically motivated more than anything else. So I mostly agree with what Bernie Sanders is saying there. Now, the rest of the cuts are directed at foreign aid, but again, the details are pretty unclear. Senator Susan Collins, who's considered one of the more moderate Republicans, actually voted against the bill and stated that the rescissions package has a big problem. No one really knows what program reductions are in it. For example, there are $2.5 billion in cuts to the development assistance account, which covers everything from basic education to water and sanitation, to food security, all things that the Trump administration has shown that they don't really care much about. But she continues saying, but we don't know how those programs will be affected. And even Senator MItch McConnell, who voted for the bill, complained about this, saying, I want to make it clear, I don't have any problem with reducing spending. we're talking about not knowing. They would like a blank check is what they would like. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think they ought to make the case. Well, they didn't make the case and you voted for the bill. Like, what is this? If I say something, so Cenk, if I say, no, I have a problem with covering this story. The story hasn't developed enough. We don't have all the details. It would be irresponsible to cover it. I would be ridiculous to then immediately cover the story right after I complain about it. It's just insane, but go ahead.
So that goes to the core of the issue, guys. What do we tell you? We tell you ahead of time. All of them pass. Oh, look at that. It's taking money away from things that are positive, like humanitarian aid, boo, PBS, NPR, etc. And so what are they gonna do? Oh, 51-48. Oh no, Susan Collins and Murkowski voted no. Tillis and McConnell had objections. Now don't hold it against the Republicans. No, I definitely hold it against the Republicans. It's always going to be, oh look, it's they just had enough votes. 51 almost every time, right? Oh, now Murkowski and Collins, you guys can now go pretend to be moderates back in your home states as we pass every single bill and play these nonsense games, right? So, okay, now what did they do? They took $9 billion out. Remember the package they just passed, mainly tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy, added $4 trillion to the debt. Do you know what 4 trillion minus 9 billion is? 4 trillion. It's not gonna make a dent. It's not even gonna come close to making a dent. So what's the point of this? It's gratuitous. And plus, by the way, they say, well, look, we took away the stupid humanitarian aid. We had no more Mr. Nice Guy. America says, okay, yeah, we'll still do war. We'll still bomb Iran, okay? But we won't do any of the positive stuff we were doing. That'll show the world. And on top of that, all the foreign aid is cut except for, you all know, right? I mean, this is now comical. I don't even have to say it. So of course, except for Israel, but also Egypt and Jordan. Why? Because they have a peace deal with Israel and they're allies with Israel. By the way, I like that they have a peace deal. I like that they're rewarded for that peace deal. But it is like over the top. They're like, that's it, no more money for anyone. Well, obviously, everything to Israel and their allies, but we mean the rest of the world we have no interest in. Only Israel. Come on, guys. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah. Look, it's essentially paying off Israel's neighbors to keep it cool.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Don't have an
but that's not a bad thing. I want peace in the region, right?
No, that's fine. That's fine. But again, it kind of goes to show you what our government's priorities are. And by the way, it also creates a situation in which, as we know, Israel is free to bomb all of its neighbors with impunity.
Yeah, because nobody fights back, right? And
yeah.
So, and look, I don't want anybody fighting, but they just drop bombs on Damascus anytime they want. They're threatening to drop bombs on Tehran again. They drop bombs on Lebanon anytime they want, but they're not the aggressors. No, your eyes are lying to you, your ears are lying to you, et cetera. Last thing, they say, oh my God, rescission, and this is a power of Congress and we won't give it away. Trump has it right away. They give it away. And the only positive out of this whole thing is, at least it wasn't like unconstitutional. Because sometimes what Trump does, a lot of times what he does with executive orders is, well, that's it, I'm not paying that anymore, even though Congress authorized it, right? You don't have that option. So at least they went back for a congressional vote, got the congressional vote. We might not like the result, but at least that part of it was done right. Fair show in America. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.